So, welcome. It is Practioner Sunday. It's been a long time since we've had one of these. Everyone who greeted you at the door, everyone that you see on the platform here with me, we have some practitioners in the front row, and we have a few practitioners that are away on other personal business, but we are your Science of Mind licensed spiritual professional practitioners. Yay! Yeah, thank you. I would like to ask, and please be brave, is there anyone here that doesn't quite understand what a practitioner is, what we do, or what the idea is behind it? And just a little show of hands. Okay, thank you. Thanks for doing that. The idea, I want to talk about what we are today and where the whole idea came from our founder, Ernest Holmes. And it's an interesting story, but it's also vital and important to our spiritual movement and our organization. So what I would like to do first is, there's a lot of us that you see on a very regular basis, and some faces you may not see on a regular basis. So I'm going to have everybody state their name. I want to do a name-face recognition, so while we're up here, you really kind of get a grasp of that in your mind. So if I can invite you three to stand, and Diane's going to sit where she is in high watch, because she's in process right now. Linda Brewer just left. Linda is actually Reverend Linda. She's a Unity minister plus a religious science practitioner, so she has two titles. Audrey Gum is not here, and Camille Winnie is not here. So if you'll just state your name, please.
I'm Anita.
I'm Teresa.
And I'm Katie.
I'm Selena.
I'm Jen.
My name's Linda Forrest.
I'm Farrell.
Jody.
Mary Cordell.
Thank you, and I am Lynn Hagster. Very good. So. I love this work. I love the work as a practitioner, and my life has changed drastically over the years that I've learned about this process and through all the Science of Mind studies that I've done. We all have stories, we all have things about our lives that have changed and demonstrations that we have done. And so I want to talk about this, but there's so much to say in such a limited time. So I want to give you a summary overview of where this process came from. I'm going to be using a lot of quotes from Dr. Ernest Holmes, who was our founder. It was his idea that brought this into fruition, and he says it best. So let me begin with these. There is a vitality in the communion with the infinite which is productive of the highest good. There is a divine urge within everyone to know more, to be more, and to express more. And I have found that the thing we are searching for is the thing we are searching with. Out there in the vast reaches of outer space, and here in the equally vast reaches of inner space, everything is in order. Our task is to begin to understand that the universal mind is resident everywhere and also of necessity within us. Our prayer is that the truth be made known that cannot fail to be revealed. The very first time I entered the Salt Lake Church of Religious Science was in 2002, and that's what it was called back then. It is now Centers for Spiritual Living for lots of different reasons. But there was a banner that hung in the entryway of the center at that time, and that was over on 9th East and 5400 South. There's a couple of us still here that were there back then, a lot of you guys back there. And the banner read, "Change your thinking, change your life." I knew what the phrase meant. My grandmother was a Christian Science practitioner high up in that church. I'd been a follower of Seth for a long time, so I'd had this understanding that our mind had some power. But how do you really change your thinking? I've been thinking happy, wishful, positive thoughts all the time. I thought that was all you had. Really that was the whole word, but it's not. There was a lot more to be done, and I realized that I was being planted with seeds on how to make that work and how to learn that. Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the organization, actually had a TV show in Los Angeles in the mid-50s. Do a lot of you know that? You can go on YouTube. There's only a couple of the shows that are episodes that you can find, but if you type it up on YouTube, they'll pull up, and they're quite interesting. There was an old TV process back then that's used, so it's black and white and kind of funky, but it's cool. You can see him in his little short teddy bear way, and he's just full of passion and love because he is the just the emanation of what this whole truth is and how he was so connected into the divine. So the show is called This Thing Called Life. And from one of the episodes, Make Your Own Tomorrows, I have this quote. Become master of your thinking, hence master of your fate. There is no law of human heredity imposed upon you. Evil has no history. Limitation has no past. That which is opposed to good has no future. The eternal now is forever filled with the presence of perfect life. You always have been and forever will remain a complete and perfect expression of the eternal mind, which is God, the living Spirit, Almighty. Now, the word God is what used back there in that time frame. Of course, we use a whole lot of different words now: spirit, universe, the divine. And I tend to use the word God a lot because it's an umbrella term for me. I've done a lot of healing work around that. So if that word comes out, please just take it and put into the word and vessel that works for you the best, because it's really how you take that in. Dr. Holmes had an opportunity to meet Albert Einstein. They met for dinner one time. And they had an opportunity to share different ideas about science and abstract laws because they both understood that. Holmes shared with Einstein his views on world peace, saying that permanent peace or permanent world peace is not an illusion, but a potential possibility and an evolutionary imperative, and science will aid in that evolution. Einstein gave his illustrations about principles which affirmed that good ultimately must vindicate itself. He had proof of that. Holmes' reply was, give them time. The physicist and the metaphysicist will use the same textbook. Einstein said, there are two ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. Dr. Holmes did not counter that statement, but he did say at another time, this is not necessarily a miracle. This is the way life was meant to be. It's what we come from. In the Bible passage, John 10:30, Jesus proclaims, I and the Father are one. Dr. Holmes replies, maybe it sounds too good to be true, and yet all nature is a living example, a continuous reminder that there is a spirit emanating everything, a presence diffused, a law governing, a unity sustaining, a coordinating will binding all together, a unifying principle holding everything in place. It is this very principle that carried Dr. Holmes onto the path of creating this movement and the practitioner training. So let me give you a little history about that. Dr. Holmes was raised a Baptist in New England. It was not under the ordinary worm of the dust, you'll be a sinner forever kind of philosophy. His parents actually believed in the goodness of God and the love of God. They did not believe in a devil. They urged Ernest and his 8 brothers to approach religion with a questioning mind. They would not allow fear to be taught in their home in any relation to religion whatsoever. No hellfire, no damnation. Only one story, that Jesus said, ye are gods. And that's from John 10:34. Anything else was a lie. So he started early with a great foundation for looking at an expanded view of the infinite in a very good way, questioning what was his part in all of that. His parents read to him all the time, but they read what they were reading. They read religion and philosophy. How'd you like to go to bed to that at night? However, one of the first books that Ernest Holmes memorized was Natural Law of the Spirit World by Henry Drummond. I would love to have had that read to me at night. He had an ability to memorize passages as a child that were read to him. So he remembered everything. So let's jump ahead. Further in his life, he studies, he self-studies, he reads everything he can get his hands on. He loved Thomas Troward. That was the key that opened a lot of doors for him. He spent time with other New Thought leaders to learn from them. And he begins to develop his own ideas about prayer. And by that point, Phineas Quimby had proven healing by the word. Mesmer was proving mind can be directed. Mary Baker Eddy of Christian Science and the Fillmores of Unity had already demonstrated their own personal healings through prayer. So Dr. Holmes began to realize that the answer to prayer really lies in the mental attitude of the one who prays. We don't change the mind of God. That's already love, fullness, wholeness. It doesn't change. It's impartial and it's universal. It's our mind that has to change. In that little universe right between our ears, that's all that stuff floating in there, we've created and taken in varying amounts, knowingly and unknowingly, ideas about ourselves and life that are less than wholeness, less than God. So Dr. Holmes also believed that anyone could pray and anyone could receive a demonstration of prayer. All are equal. No one receives a divine inspiration or revelation separate from anybody else. God is an equal opportunity creator. Holmes kept his mind focused and singular from the start that God is good and whole. And the strict affirmation of this good was the key to heal the sick in any circumstance in your life that you want to change, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And if God is only good, then it makes sense that the place to do the work, to make the changes, was right here within ourselves. There's nowhere else to go. The answer to prayer was not out there in the ether somewhere. It's not to go to somebody else and ask them what's wrong, what's going on, what's okay, what's not okay. It's the mental attitude of the person who is saying the prayer. In his own deepening prayer, he developed an awareness of a divine presence that he could commune with. And that there is a divine law, a principle that could be used to move that demonstration. Communing with the divine, with God, is through what we call here spiritual practices, and we teach those. It is this information and the process that was developed into healing prayer that we call spiritual mind treatment to demonstrate healings and changes in our life. It's also referred to as affirmative prayer. In the prayer, we affirm the good of God and that we are that, and we affirm the outcome. As we are created from that God substance, we already have the good of God available to us, so we don't need to beg or bargain or plead. We affirm that the good revealed is already right here. It is our heritage as a creation of the divine. Dr. Holmes taught others this new understanding and trained him in the technique he had developed to bring them deeper into that awareness. These people became known as his practitioners. He believed that any individual, to the degree that they are aware of the indwelling presence, is a revealer of truth, one who demonstrates the answer to the prayer. It is our work to keep the focus and clarity that the good of God is the core truth of what we are. This is from the Science of Mind, page 432. If our eye is single, we shall be filled with light. That is, when we perceive the unity of good, we shall perceive it in its entirety, an undivided whole. We must cleave to the good and trust absolutely in the law of God to bring about any desired end. Spirit will mold our purposes when we allow it to do so. As we learn to depend more and more upon the perfect law, we shall find that the outward things which are necessary to our good will be provided. We shall be cared for as the lilies of the field, which live directly upon the divine bounty, yet they toil not, nor do they spin. That promise, the promise, is that our lives are just that, and doesn't have to be anything less. So you change your thinking, change your life. One of the proteges that worked with Dr. Holmes was a gentleman named Obadiah Harris. He wrote an article about spending time with Dr. Holmes, and this article is in the January 2003 Science of Mind magazine. That particular issue has a personal touch for me, and there's a lot in there that I've kept, so I refer to this article, actually. In the article, Obadiah talks about an experience he had living there when Ernest Holmes and Hazel didn't have kids, so they always had people in and out of their home and come to stay with them. And so if somebody else could drive, when Ernest wanted to go somewhere, he would let them drive. So Obadiah and Ernest go to get in the car, and in the process of Ernest Holmes getting in the car, Obadiah shuts the door a little too quick and cuts his hand. And of course he's like, I cut his hand, he's bleeding. And what was interesting is that Dr. Holmes just stayed in absolute peace. He didn't get upset. He didn't get flustered. But he looked at the cut, and he did a quick prayer, and then just moved his hand over it, and it was gone. And Obadiah Harris was so stunned and bewildered that it really set a path for him. And he talks about it in this article. Today, Obadiah Harris is the director of the Philosophical Institute in Los Angeles and teaches classwork and degree in consciousness studies. And he also teaches our Bible classes at the ministry school. He's an amazing little man. There was also another article that I read. Just within a few months of that, our sister organization used to print the little magazine, The Creative Thought, which is out of print as of last year. But it was a whole month of full spiritual mind treatments. And then the front of the magazine was also articles by practitioners and ministers about what they were doing in their lives. So there was a practitioner, a lady, who was talking about all the different ways that she was demonstrating in her life. And she mentions one particular incident. And she's on an airplane with her son, and he's being kind of rambunctious and won't stay in his seat, kind of like my little grandson, jumping all over the place and just, excited. And she tells him, now you better sit still or, you're going to get hurt. You have to sit in your seat. And so he's jumping around and evidently, ultimately just kind of leaps forward in one point in the seat and with the seat in front of him, and he cuts his finger. And so the mother, who is a practitioner, remains calm. And she holds his hand, and she puts her hand over it, and she says a prayer treatment. And when she moves her hand, it's gone. And the little boy is, Mommy, where'd it go? Where'd it go? It's gone. And she talks about that feeling of having that passion and that deepness as a practitioner, and the prayer and the work. Both of these articles took me hook, line, and sinker. I mean, these are present-day circumstances and present-day works and healings. We read about so many things that are so far in the past, you wonder, can anybody do them? But these are people who are alive now. My grandmother was a Christian Science practitioner and did all kinds of works. Lena comes from a Christian Science background, and they do amazing things. I know a minister friend that he works with people with cancer, and when they go to him with a tumor, and he works with them, when they go for their next checkup, the doctor, kind of rubs his eyes and says, the tumor's gone. So when we really go deep into knowing the truth and wholeness that we are, it's possible. It's all there. Dr. Kathy Hearn, she was the spiritual leader of our organization for 10 years, and she'll be here in September, actually, to speak with us. She's now the Dean of Ministry Students at San Diego. She describes practitioners as having a very important role in our spiritual organization to see with the eyes behind the eyes, to see the truth of wholeness, regardless of circumstances, situations, and appearances. In knowing this truth, in knowing the power of the mind, the truth of wholeness is called forth into expression and is revealed. We see only wholeness, nothing broken, nothing to be fixed. Only the truth is uncovered in thought. The call to being a practitioner is a commitment to putting spiritual principle into practice in every area of one's life and the devotion to helping others to do the same thing. We live by example. The practitioner consciousness is the foundation of our healing work that we do. All ministers within our organization begin their training as practitioners first, learning that foundation, and they see themselves as that. We are the ecclesial arm of the church, assisting our ministers, not seeking from the congregants, but supporting and helping the congregants see their truth. Practitioners of truth are called to the spiritual path. We see wholeness and assist others in revealing their wholeness and truth and purpose. We do our own work first in our training, healing ourselves, and when we are in prayer treatment with others, we're healing our thought about the particular item or challenge that that person brings to us for prayer. I have a practitioner friend in Tucson who calls it TSW. This stuff works. And you can, interchange a few S words in there if you want. When I'm really struck by something, when I look back on something that really was shifted, I make it WTSW. Wow, this stuff works, because it still amazes me. There's a story about Gandhi that gets passed around, and I'll say it crosses a couple different religious philosophies. It's also in the Islam philosophy about a guy named Nasruddin, who was a Sufi master. But the story goes, there was a mother who brought her son to Gandhi because he was hooked on sweets and sugars uncontrollably. So she takes him to Gandhi, and she tells Gandhi, "Make my son stop eating sweets." And Gandhi says, "Come back in 2 weeks." So she goes home. She comes back in 2 weeks. And she says, "Okay, tell my son to stop eating sweets." And he says, "Boy, stop eating sweets." And the mother says, "Oh, hey, you couldn't have told me that 2 weeks ago." What? And he says, "Well, 2 weeks ago I was still eating sweets." So he had to clear himself first and change that about himself before he could do that for another. And that's what we do as practitioners. We clear ourselves first. We are taught to heal ourselves, to clear our plate with every person that we pray with. Our training shows us the path to remember there is only one mind. So as we see the truth and wholeness of ourselves, we are clear to see it in others. Our commitment as a practitioner is to live a life of truth and wholeness, to know it, to see it first in all things and all people. From 365 Science of Mind, this was the reading from August 13th. "I know that the Spirit within me goes before me, making perfect, plain, straight, easy, and happy the pathway of my experience. There is nothing in me that can obstruct the divine circuits of life, of love, of beauty, and of truth. My word dissolves every negative thought or impulse that would throw a shadow of unbelief across the threshold of my expectation. I lift high my cup of acceptance, knowing that the divine outpouring will fill it to the brim. I identify myself with the living Spirit, with all the power, all the presence, and all the life there is." Anita describes her experience of becoming a practitioner in this way. "I didn't set out to be a practitioner. About 10 years ago, I began enrolling in classes because I enjoyed the challenge, the deeper connection with others, and the spiritual journey. I even took some of the classes twice. Eventually, I was drawn and pushed into the first year of practitioner studies. It wasn't until midway through the second year that I actually thought I might end up becoming a licensed practitioner. I was afraid of failing, but I was also afraid of disappointing others, so I didn't want to quit. She didn't want to disappoint herself or others, so she persisted. Now I can say that this has been one of the most empowering experiences of my life. I have stretched and grown in ways I could not have imagined. Now when life gets messy, I have the spiritual tools to deal with it. Having a regular spiritual practice is vital to me. Serving as a practitioner is a bonus. Anytime I get to pray with or for another person, I am blessed first by remembering the truth of my divinity. Then I can know the truth for another person, and I am grateful for this privilege." And so we all have stories about this. We all have opportunities and these experiences where we go, wow, this is changing my life and things are different. Now, even though Ernest Holmes believed and taught that everyone can do this, not many choose this path of a practitioner, and not many feel called to be a practitioner. But for those who are called, it is our life. And all of those here with me on the platform, and even those who are off on other things today, this is our life. And this is what we are called to do and what we choose to do. I've had that calling twice. I often wondered what is that when somebody gets a calling about something? It never meant anything to me until it happened. Did you feel it? Yeah, you feel it. And I had it to be a practitioner, and then I had it again to be a minister, and it was even stronger. And so I love this life, and it's what we are. So we invite you to pray with us. Let us pray for you. Have faith in our faith, because it's deep and it's powerful. We know the truth for you and as you. And you can come to us with a challenge. You can also come to us for what is happy in your life. There's nothing better than to say happy, just amazing treatment, especially when you're driving down the road. Happy prayers. So we just continue that and let it flow and be good. So come to us when we can pray for you. And so now we go into prayer.
It is my privilege and joy now to recognize that divine presence, that source of all that is, the creator of life, sustainer of life, that omnipresent, omnipotent source whose heart fills the entire vastness of the cosmos. It fills it all with its essence of love and joy and beauty, of abundance and wholeness. There is nothing to be added nor nothing taken away, for it is perfect, whole and complete right now, always has been, always will be. Of course, this is what I am, this is what we all are, as we are a part of this universe. Like a spider web out of a spider, we are made of the thing itself. We are made of the essence of love, of joy, of happiness, of abundance, of perfect health. We are never separate or apart from this. We cannot be. As it is in the air we breathe, the food I eat, the water I drink, the places I go, people I see, it is nothing other than the living divine. And knowing for us, each are avail and open ourselves to this ongoing guidance. To hear that voice of the divine and to boldly step forward, knowing that all the resources are there to move through this journey of life. There is nothing other than the divine living and moving through each of us, through each event, through each day, each moment. And I'm so grateful to be aware of this presence, of this law which receives my word and makes it so. That there is no more for me to do other than to powerfully and consciously state my word and then just allow it to happen. For it is not for me to do, but just to allow and align myself with that truth. And so releasing my word into that law, I let it go and let it be. As together we say, and so it is.